What is up, everyone? I'm so excited because I have completed yet another sketchbook, and I've already begun my new sketchbook, which is the same type of sketchbook, which is a moleskin. It's the 8.5 by 11. But something happened during the sketchbook tour that has changed the way that I am practicing and changing the way that I am drawing. If you saw the last drawing video that I put up, you'll see that I am now doing a lot more direct drawing from imagination, taking me closer to my goal of kind of drawing like Kim Jung-gi, having that freestyle that people like Peter Draw has, where you can just sit down and you can just draw, right? So that's one of my goals. And the first thing you will notice, and I must say this up front, this spread here looks really nice. But unfortunately, I have to say this. If this is the only way that your sketchbook looks, it is likely that you will never get to the place where you can draw like Kim Jong-gi, or even, well, to get to draw like him is already an impossible task, but even in that style, to get close to that, just having pages that look like this will never get you there. And there's a breakthrough moment where I realized that and I changed what I was doing in the sketchbook. And I will talk through all of that. One of the tips that you will notice is this first three one third of the sketchbook that I did took about 3 months to complete. This last 2/3 took under 2 months to complete. So that's a combination of me uh, drawing more, being more intentional in drawing, but also something else which I will talk about as we get to it. Now, first of all, I want to say as we dive into this, there is nothing wrong with these drawings. As you can see here, I'm doing a lot of construction work, trying to make sure things lined up. A lot of this one's from imagination. I think this one as well. Some of these are from reference, but there's nothing particularly wrong with how these actually look or practicing like this in your sketchbook. But again, it really depends on your goals. What are you trying to achieve with your art? Uh, it's a lot of reference work here, really cool looking from reference, throwing a guy, even including some perspective work. I think this one was from imagination, this one was referenced, and this one was referenced as well. And making sure you have, so there's nothing wrong. These are all great things to do as you progress in your journey. First steps, second steps, even I will probably be doing more reference work in the future as well, because it is important in terms of kind of figuring out how to stylize things, how to add in detail. So this isn't bad. But again, you if you noticed here, most of my sketchbook is looking like this. Everything is being kind of structured out, and this is fine, but there is another step that you need to take. So this is good. This is a good start. Have some cool things here. This is starting to head in the direction you want, where you have some imaginative work here, but as you can see, there's still a lot of laying out, which I think this is, again, part of that first step of what you'll need to do. Trying to figure out exactly how things should be laid out, how they should look, and and then I started working on some heads. That's it's always been a weakness of mine, and it's something I've been working through. So again, a lot more work here, working on some horizon line work, and none of this is really bad. Okay, so again, I'm not saying that if your sketchbook looks like this, it's a bad thing to do. There will be some of this in in following sketchbooks, likely in the one that I'm doing now, but it shouldn't be the only thing in your sketchbook. There is an important thing that you have to include as well. We'll get to that, and I'll talk through what led to that breakthrough moment as I get to it. So here we have more studies, more stuff from imagination, calling out some of my mistakes on ground planes. This was a reference from Matt Draws stuff on Instagram. It's pretty cool. Face from TB Choi. And I've been trying to reference the Instagram artists that I get images from if I reference them. So if you see these little Instagram markings, that's what's going on there. But pretty cool stuff going on. But again, there's something missing. All right, so started doing some gesture study work, some little turnarounds, some stuff from imagination, working with some shaping and some design work. Threw in a little horse head there. So pretty cool stuff. It's pretty clean. I okay. All right, let's okay, just randomly trying stuff. I mean, hey, it's a sketchbook for experimenting. I opened up a brush ink pen. Um and yeah, brush ink pens are a little bit they get out of control. And this is where I started to realize that I needed, something was missing from my practice, right? So I started doing these from imagination straight to brushing pen, and everything just started falling apart. It's almost like I didn't know how to draw anymore. Like, what is going on here? So this was a great experiment. I enjoyed it. I will come back to it, but I started going, you know what? Something is missing from my practice. I don't know exactly what it is, but when I try to draw straight, it's like everything falls apart. Everything falls apart. So I said, all right, let me leave the brush pen alone just for a second because, again, why I decided to test this out is because I had been doing all these studies, right? And all these different things from imagination, and they had been coming out so well. Like most of these shapes are from imagination, and they were coming out so well. But when I tried to do it straight to ink, it fell apart. And so, like I said, I figured something was missing, and so I started to go in search of what was going on there. And one of the things I happened upon during this process was a few drawings. Tom Fox Draws, if you haven't seen me review his book, then I really liked his book and I found out that he had an Instagram account, right? So I went on the Instagram account and I saw him drawing in the same direct method that persons like Kim Jung-ji draws in. So I'm adding Tom Fox Draws to my kind of list of people who do or are at least able to do. I've since found quite a few other persons who are able to do this type of direct draw. And I think it's kind of like the coolest thing ever. I enjoy doing it now that I'm beginning to be able to do it. But let's talk through. So these are some images that I copied from his Instagram account. And and so as you can still see, there are still a few construction markings all under these images as I try to make sure everything is laid out good. And started doing some more drawings from his work. I think this one I did from my own. He had a few other studies in there. I started looking into some folds. Maybe I need folds. Tried to do one here on my own. Went back to some more construction work here. So these are from imagination. And then this next page, I think, is where it finally clicked for me of what I was. No, actually, not yet. So I did some more uh, work in terms of getting construction in, trying to do some figure references, trying to really start to nail down because I still couldn't figure out exactly what was missing. And here, this set of images he drew these from imagination, straight in one shot, and I came behind, of course, on these, you can still see the construction lines for these um, in the background here, the pencil, and then I came over with ink. And then for this image over here, he had the bottom section of this, but not the top section of this drawn. And I decided to try to draw in a top section as well. And what occurred to me while trying to do that, after having done all of this, is that for all my construction work that I have been doing, the problem I had was I really didn't have a good grasp on how to rotate things in space. So it's twofold. I don't really have a grasp on how to rotate things in space, and not having that knowledge and not being able to automatically see it affects my confidence. So because I didn't have the confidence and the clear idea of how to rotate things in space, I always had to kind of construct it out, draw a lot of marks, trying to search for which one looks correct. And then once I've done all of that searching, then I'm able to come over with pen or stronger lines and put in the actual lines. But it all boils down to not being able to actually just see it in your head and know exactly how to put the images down. So I decided I have to go back to structure. And that's what I did here. And very quickly, if you can look at these, I realized that even this was too complex for me, because I was trying to do, if you notice here, these are mostly single lines. I was trying to get it done in one single line because I'm like, okay, these basic shapes, I already know. Can I do them in one single line? I end up going over multiple times. And by the time I got here, it occurred to me, I'm not even confident enough in doing the robo bean. And so I took it back a step further. Step one, right? Back to square one, just blocks, something I definitely knew the structure of, just a block, just one at a time, as simple as possible. And then I go, can I manipulate this with only putting down one line? Because if you're drawing in ink, if you're drawing in pen, or even if you're drawing in pencil, but you're just drawing direct, as in drawing your image directly, you have to be able to just put down one line and have that be it, right? And so, taking it as simple as possible, I went to back to boxes, and I quickly found that yes, I could draw a box. Nice. Okay, let's start moving it in space. And I already found that I actually didn't have a firm understanding of even how to do this basic rotation in space. And if you're going to be drawing directly and drawing in like Kim Jung-gi with so much perspective, you have to be able to see how to position objects in space. And so here ensued my task of trying to figure out how to rotate boxes. How do they work? How do all these different planes line up? And as you can see, a lot of work here. Started pushing it and going, hey, okay, what happens here if this one starts falling over? It doesn't look right. How do I get this right? Doing a lot of work here, and this is about to get a little bit crazy here, okay? So brace yourself. Brace yourself, okay? So here we go. There are going to be a few pages of boxes here, people. And as you will notice over here, I'm trying to do the rotation around, and it's just not working out here. You see, as soon as I start rotating it, I'm drawing multiple lines, having to start searching again for what's going on. This isn't looking good. And then I watched the Modern Day James video that I commented on started figuring out some stuff, figured out how to simplify what he was actually saying. Because as one commenter pointed out in the video where I talked about box rotations, the video from modern day James is pretty complex. Even some of his other discussions, it gets pretty technical. I think it's made for people who are intermediate and up to the advanced section. It gets pretty complicated, his video. So I found a way to simplify it, and I started working through the process. As you can see here, still getting a lot of unconfident lines around here. And then something started clicking here, and I said to myself, okay, let's try a few in pen, straight to pen. And we were able to do some of those. That's like nice. Did some more here, and then by here I think I finally had the understanding, and I was like, let's do our rotation again. And as you can see here, I was able to do my rotation, one line, staying confident, changed up into a different shape, started on that, and now it was time to take this knowledge and start progressing to other shapes. And again, as soon as you start doing that, it's something about your brain, it just goes a little bit wonky, and the practice ensues. You just don't give up, right? So I started with torso and pelvis, simple shapes, trying to figure out there are a lot of things going on here. Don't look too deeply at it, but got to the point where I was confident enough to go, okay, let's do torsos and pelvis in pen, right? Straight to ink. This is a missing link. Having that confidence to actually see where the objects go, how they fit together. Started adding on some cylinders for feet, all right, and how they interact. Through in the torso again. Things always start falling apart a little bit as you add in new shapes. And then I started trying to figure out, okay, how do I represent these cylinders and boxes so they look more human-like? So you see quite a lot of work here, trying to do some rotation on the whole thing. I put yikes here, but actually this one actually isn't that bad when I came back and looked at it. Doing a lot of work here. I mean, it kind of gets crazy, but it pays off in the end. So putting in the mileage is another thing. So two things that have caused me to complete the sketchbook faster is when you are drawing straight, just using one line and just putting it down and leaving it, you draw a lot faster. And this is one reason why Kim Jung-ji could be so prolific as well, because even though he's drawing slowly, he is drawing it and leaving it alone, and you get to cover a lot of ground, which is important for troubleshooting, trying to figure out how things work, how things should look in different positions. You cover a lot more ground, you get a lot more learning out in a short amount of time, or in the same amount of time that you were using before. You were just able to cover so much more ground because you're not spending your time going, okay, should the pelvis be here or here? Okay, does that look right? And then after all of that, having to come over and draw solid lines so it actually looks structured. Here, you're able to draw it, make a mistake, correct the mistake, repeat. As you can see here, I constantly start adding in more and more things and trying to get characters interacting with each other and continuing to work on how I want things to lay out. This is straight to ink, doing a bunch of different characters in different scenarios, then tackling the head, which is still a struggle for me, but getting some head shapes in, trying to see how they interact, trying to add it into the shapes they have, hands, throwing in some hands. But if you notice from here on out, everything, or I think most everything, there's probably times when I don't quite remember if I have some in here where I still do kind of searching lines, but I'm really trying to stop myself from doing that now. Really trying to get one line down, get it done. And so just drawing straight, trying to use as little erasing as possible. I do use erasing every once in a while, but for the most part, just putting it down and leaving it alone and seeing how it turns out. If there's a mistake, if there's something I see that I can do better, you just draw it again, right? But it gets you in the habit of correcting it by drawing it again and being able to see in your mind's eye where the different body parts should be, how they should be positioned. And this is one of the things that I've found really helpful about going through all of these boxes that just seems like, wow, a huge waste of time. But what happens is that you begin to actually visualize it in your head, the different planes, and that helps you when it comes on to actually drawing an actual person. You can see those boxes because the boxes have become so simple now, and you're basically attempting to put the clothing or position a more human like looking body where you know the boxes show up. I don't know if I explained that well, but you'll see some of that coming on here. So some more practice. So these figures would be the first attempt. If you even see here, you can kind of see the box structure going on here. If you notice, these straps are drawn as if they're coming across the top of the box and then coming down the front plane of the box, and then kind of keeping in mind that this line is parallel, so these two should be parallel to this line if you drew a line across here. So these are some of the things you're basically thinking about it as if you're still as if you have the box there in the position and you're kind of trying to put the clothing over the box. And it makes it better. It makes it better. So trying quite a few things here. I think this was just a reference up here, but putting it in the style that's simplified. And what I've also found is that it's easier to memorize things that are simplified. So if you're back in this section here, drawing more complicated things, it is very hard to memorize something like this and have it useful to draw from imagination because there's just too much going on here. Now, something like this is very easy to memorize. You have a box, you have the hip, one foot going forward, one foot going back. I mean, this is very easy to memorize and to even manipulate and do something different with. Not so with something more complicated like what we may have been practicing a lot in your drawings. And so I started jumping into kind of including more figures, trying to put them in a situation. You see some of my boxes going in there, a few persons. Again, looking at these, the clothing is very box-like, and yes, this does create some stiffness, but we will be able to work on that later on. The main part is to be able to position them in place. Even if you look at this guy, very boxy, but that's okay, knowing that I would have never been able to do something like this in the past, just drawing straight. Still some work on horses and stuff like that. That back foot really, really needs some work. Um, but yeah, before there was also almost no way for me to think about getting to Kim's level. Um, but now I think I have a path. There's still a lot I need to do. The closer I get, the more I am amazed at what he was actually able to do, the more I understand. But at least I can see some path forward now. So even when I do my references, yes, I am thinking about the structure underneath, but I am mostly practicing drawing direct. And yes, some of the things aren't perfect, but you're also learning to be more confident by doing this, learning that, hey, it may not be perfect, but it still works out. And if you look at Kim Jung-ji's works, some of it isn't perfect, but it still works. it still works. There's something about being able to put down confident lines that sells the drawing even more than having the perfect lines down. Now, this is another thing that's important that I'm doing down here. This was from imagination, but being able to do rotations really challenges, do you actually know what the thing looks like in space? Or it even challenges your imagination doing scenes. These are all very important. And here, rotated sideways, rotate up, rotate, rotating around. All very important things for you to try to do to push the limits of your creativity and also your imagination, your creativity. Here we have some reference. Here, I actually did some construction underneath to see if I can really hone in how some of that clothes fit over. And that's really what I'll be using these constructive models for, to really determine how clothes should flow. And now once I can visualize it, I can incorporate it into other drawings as I do them. This one you may have seen from my previous video. So this was super cool. I enjoyed it. It was more direct pencils first with as little erasing as I could, and then I came over with the pen. You can watch that in the video right before this. That was very fun for me. So we have more construction, more rotation going on here. As you can see, doing a lot of these rotations, trying to see what's going on, some direct draw, some lining up. There is some construction underneath, and trying to see how clothing fits on top of that. Some beanbag gestures, random work. But you get to cover so much more ground when you're doing this, and it's so much more effective. At least I think so. I think so. Let me know in the comments if you disagree with what I'm saying here. So, doing some perspective work, we're trying to figure out exactly how persons should line up. If they're upside down, their hair falling out. Doing a lot of work on faces and some expressions, because again, I really need to beef up my face work. And also hats. Hats are kind of tricky. And so coming back in here with some of my simple shapes, going, okay, can I make it slightly more complex and a little bit more realistic? Maybe. Then I jumped on to some work on drawing heads, trying to do a lot of work on that, constantly coming back to the direct draw of entire scenes, just kind of letting your mind run wild and go, okay, what next should I do? What next? What next? No fear, I want to kiss, me too. One thing that I also need to keep in mind, this is something that Dr. Draw talks about. It comes with time because your mind can only handle so much stuff at once. And one of the things that I have a problem still keeping in mind is that objects toward the back need to be smaller. Sometimes my proportions get away in background characters where they are probably a little bit larger than they should be. But we'll get there. It's just a lot of practice. Some more practice on direct draw. And again, being able to put down those lines directly and know that it's okay. Just leave them alone. I really like the hatching patchwork that I did on that. More work on faces and trying to figure out, okay, this is a complex face. How do I simplify it into something that is actually drawable from imagination? Some hand work here from reference and some from imagination. I don't really remember if it looks good. It's probably reference, not so good. Probably more from imagination. There you go. More work on scenes with direct draw, trying to figure out how things line up. Made some notes on what I need to work on still. Constantly more practice. And as you can see, the volume of work that I'm able to cover is just so much more with this direct draw process. Tried some different ink wash here. This one was with the pen that you fill up with water and didn't like really how those turned out. This was more using a brush, a traditional brush, and dipping in ink. I really like some of the textures, how it turns out kind of watercolory. Eh, neither here or there. I decided at the end of it, okay, it's probably still too much distraction for now. Head back to actually learning how to draw first, and then I'll come back to shadows again in the future. Kind of trying to keep that focus a little bit and not get strayed. This was some work on folds from Modern Day James. One of the things that I did find interesting is going through it, like it makes a lot of sense, but as it starts coming to applying the knowledge of folds, it really devolves into something much simpler than the examples that are shown. So yeah, at some point I'll figure that out because it seems like in the actual application of these folds, it's a lot simpler than. I mean, these examples are really cool, and I had lots of fun drawing them. Again, drawing direct, but the application of it is much more simplified. So that's something I'll continue to work on. As you can see here, trying to work through a lot of folds myself, some from imagination, some from some from reference. So trying to see how those work out. Some more reference work and some imaginative work mixed in. But again, all direct draw, which makes things go pretty quickly. Doing a lot more work here. Um, Doing some rotations. I think I was actually at a tire store waiting to get my snow tires put on, and I did some drawing there. This one was from a image from one of Kim Jung-ji's drawings, and I did a direct draw on it as well. And again, as you can see, the folds that he is using in his work, it's a lot more simplified than the examples of how folds should look. So a part of the process is learning what reality is and then simplifying it down to what actually works in a drawing. I guess it's similar to photography where there are some things that work in photograph, but if you're actually looking at the person who's being photographed, like it looks really weird what they're doing, but it comes out amazing in photographs. And I think a similar thing is going on with drawing, where there are some things that look a certain way in real life, but to do this type of drawing that Kim Jong Ji does, it's a much more simplified process that works for the drawing that isn't really real life. So you're simplifying it down, and the simplified things look much better in drawings. This was a really cool page spread, and yeah, a lot of exploration being covered in a short time. So again, it's just so important because this is how you can get your mileage in. These two spreads were done in the same day. Again, oh, well, actually, to here, and then this one was the last page. But again, exploring, just drawing things, you're going to be making mistakes, but you're going to be making mistakes faster, learning faster, and even though there are a ton of mistakes in this section, it's actually still pretty cool. And that's one of the things you learn, which allows you to increase your confidence that it's going to be okay. I guess similar to drawing in ink in the Drawbox course, you slowly begin to build confidence and know that it's going to be okay. I started, after doing this, going back into some anatomy because as you want to build up your drawings a little bit more, while you won't be drawing all of this complexity, what I have learned is that you actually need to know the complexity in order to simplify it. And so that's why sometimes I'm still doing reference work. Well, this one's from Imagination. This one's from Kim Jung-ji, but this one is a reference. So still doing reference work to see how things actually look, because then this informs how you are able to then go ahead and do your more simplified work. And so doing both go together, and especially in this, trying to figure out how the muscles overlap, because it really affects how, if a hand's coming backwards or you're looking at it from the top or from the bottom, should the line cross on the top or the bottom. But anyway, so yep, this is the last page here. I normally don't do these last, like if you notice this opens flat, the first and last pages of these books are kind of weird where they can't really open flat unless you crease the page somewhere in here. So I normally leave those, but I have already started a new sketchbook like this. But I am excited about what this new sketchbook is going to turn out to be, what breakthroughs are going to come from this, and just looking forward to the progress I am about to make. All right. So if you've liked the sketchbook tour, if you've liked what I've shared here, follow me on my journey as I continually take this one little baby step toward in the direction of drawing like Kim Jung-ji slash Peter Draws slash Tom Fox Draws slash other artists that I've come across that I don't know their name right now who's able to do this style of drawing. Um, so this is going to be my goal, the journey that I'm on. If you want to see how it turns out, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, drop a comment, and I'll see you in the next video.